Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Charles Love, and I have the honor of serving as the chair of the Political Action Committee of the Social Justice Ministry at Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome you on behalf of Friendship Missionary Baptist Church and our community partners. This is the second of two political forums, and we certainly appreciate your tuning in. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge our partners in this endeavor. Our partnership comprised of the members of the Alpha Lambda Omega chapter and the Rho Psi Omega chapter of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. The Antioch Missionary Baptist Church, the Charlotte Alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Democracy North Carolina, the League of Women's Voters of Charlotte and Mecklenburg, St. Paul Baptist Church, and Temple Bethel, and they're all there on your screen. This evening's forum will feature candidates running for the North Carolina Supreme Court, the North Carolina Court of Appeals, 4 North Carolina House District seats, Mecklenburg County Commissioner at Large, and 4 Mecklenburg County Commissioner District seats. I'd like to remind you that we invited candidates for all of the contested positions in Mecklenburg County. They were all contacted by mail, email, and by telephone. Also, I'd like to let you know that because of the number of people appearing tonight, there will not be any questions from the chat. But we asked the candidates to put your contact information in the chat so that people who wish to follow up with the question might have that information. I'll now have our invocation by Reverend Sherman Parker from Friendship Missionary Baptist Church.
If all minds and hearts are clear, could we bow our heads? Precious Lord, we come to you today thanking you for your grace and your mercy and your goodness and your provision and protection over our lives today, in the past, and in our futures. We thank you for the gift of your Son and our Savior Jesus, who died on the cross for our sins as our eternal Savior for eternal life and salvation with you. We also thank you for the gift of the Holy Spirit that guides us and directs us on our journey back home with revelation of your way, word, and will, and discernment and intercessory prayer on our behalf. We ask you to forgive us for any trespasses against your way, word, or will, or against any others, and just continue to guide us. Lord, we come today opening up this forum. We thank you for the opportunity that you've given us to have a forum, to have an open discussion so that we can understand, like Isaiah and Jeremiah, what should we do, Lord, to ensure justice is brought to the people. Lord, we ask you to give us the Holy Spirit to continue to give us heightened discernment and revelation of the things we should know, the things we should hear, and the things we should act on. We thank you for this time. We thank you for the people that have brought this together. And we thank you for the participants for coming and to hear this. And Lord, we stand on the word of Isaiah and Jeremiah says, you will reveal to us in your way and manner what we should do, and so that we can make sure that justice reigns in our nation. And we ask this in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Sherman. Okay. I'd now like to introduce our moderator for this evening's forum, Dr. Corliss Thompson. Dr. Thompson is professor and the associate dean of the Graduate School of Education at Northeastern University. She's a member of Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, and she serves on the Social Justice Ministry. Dr. Thompson will explain the process and engage the candidates.
Video settings.
Thank you. I think we've got someone off mute. If the host could check that for us, that would be great. Thank you so much, everyone that's here this evening to hear from candidates. Thank you to all of the candidates. And Dr. Love has already thanked our sponsors. We know how important the upcoming election is. And so we just really appreciate the time that everyone has put in to really hear about these important issues. So in tonight's session, each candidate will be able to have a 1-minute opener. and then 3 to 6 questions depending on timing at 1 minute each, and then we will have a 2-minute closer. Depending on the race and scheduling, I may ask consecutive questions to one candidate, or I might spread out the questions to multiple candidates. The conversation tonight will be facilitated in part by our timekeepers, so a big thanks to them. They will set the timer for each question after I state it, and after the timer starts, each participant will have their 1 minute to respond to the questions, and when the time is up, you will hear a sound, and you will also see a sign that says time is up. And that will be visible to the person speaking as well as to the rest of the audience. So we just ask that everyone govern themselves accordingly and adhere to the time limit so we can get everyone in. And with that, we will get started on the North Carolina Supreme Court, and we would like to welcome Allison Riggs.
Hello.
Ms. Riggs, would you like to go ahead and start with your 1 minute opener?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm really honored to participate in this incredible gathering with so many constituent groups represented. I'm Justice Allison Riggs, the newest member of the North Carolina Supreme Court, running to keep my seat and to win back our courts for justice. We lost control of the North Carolina Supreme Court in the 2022 election. And I believe that communities have been harmed since then. I'm a former civil rights attorney. I worked for nearly 15 years at the Southern Coalition for Social Justice in Durham, all across the South, but heavily in North Carolina, representing groups like the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, Common Cause, the A. Philip Randolph Institute, and so many others. I was an experienced appellate attorney arguing twice in the United States Supreme Court. And I want to center in this election us as candidates and public servants talking about our values and giving the voters the information they need to hold judges accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. So the first question, will you describe the office and what do you believe is the most important responsibility of the North Carolina Supreme Court?
The North Carolina Supreme Court is one of two appellate courts. We have an intermediate court, the Court of Appeals. The Supreme Court is the final stop when it comes to interpreting North Carolina law or the North Carolina Constitution, but we can also consider other matters. We hear cases from every possible subject matter, but we are constitutionally required, I believe, to defend and enforce every North Carolinian's constitutional rights. We are not trial courts, so not like who you see on Judge Judy or a lot of television shows. We are deciding questions of law, and we are a court of equity where we can consider that. And I think, one, it's important that people understand that you can have a court that either takes away your rights or one that protects, defends, and advances your right.
So we'll just continue along that line of questioning. In terms of the things that the court will be deciding on in the upcoming term, what do you believe is the most important issue that voters need to be thinking about? And what is your position and perspective on that?
Yeah, so we have our terms work a little differently than the U.S. Supreme Court. Our calendars are public, only sort of one sitting in advance. So we're hearing a bunch of cases related to the COVID pandemic at the end of October. We still have pending in front of us the Leandro decision, the question about the funding of public education. I can't talk about the merits of a case pending in front of me or how I will vote on it. But I do think it's important that voters understand that I'm someone who fought for educational equity for nearly 15 years before I joined the bench, centering racial justice in that work. My opponent, on the other hand, said the opinion that he is most proud of in his entire career was his opinion in 2021 that halted $1.7 billion in money to be spent sent to our public schools. And I think that information is relevant to voters.
Can you talk a little bit about your judicial philosophy, the way that you understand and interpret the law and your underlying set of ideas and beliefs that shape your rulings?
Yeah, so I reject any sort of rigid judicial philosophy. I think too lately it's become code for how you're going to vote. We hear folks say, oh, I'm an originalist or a textualist, and it just becomes code for a conservative political ideology. I am rigorous in my judicial methodology. So I approach every case in a very disciplined, particular way to make sure that I can block out external noise and consideration. I read the facts as found by the trial court and apply the law, respecting the rule of law and precedent to those facts. But I also understand that our judicial system has improvements to be had to live up to the aspirations that we set for it, the delivery of equal justice under law. So I am at core empathetic and pragmatic as well.
Thank you. Especially for the Black community, prisoners' rights, equity in our court systems related to race is really important. I wondered if you could talk about how you have approached that in the past as a justice and how you will approach it in the future.
Yeah, so we have work to do to advance racial justice in our country and certainly in our justice system, criminal and civil. There are too many barriers to justice more broadly, depending on access to resources. And there are real economic disparities and wealth gaps in this country because of the history and persistence of racial discrimination. I did justice system reform work before I joined the bench, focusing on eliminating the school to prison pipeline, which was too often about criminalizing Black and brown youth. So I understand where our criminal justice system is problematic. And I also know that people want to be safe. They want to live in their communities and feel safe. I am someone who is committed to addressing racial justice issues, advancing racial equity. And my opponent is someone who, in written opinion, said that there is no racial bias in the criminal justice system.
We will move into the 2-minute closing.
Well, I really appreciate your time and our fantastic moderator. It's obviously a quick back and forth, but I'm trying to give you as much information, and it's a busy election, but I want you to know that I am working very closely with Justice Anita Earls, who is the only other Democrat on the North Carolina Supreme Court. There are 5 Republicans and 2 Democrats. And since we lost control of the North Carolina Supreme Court, we've had rulings overturned relating to gerrymandering and voter ID and so many others. Our courts are worth fighting for because every North Carolinian's rights are worth fighting for. And I am working very closely with our Court of Appeals candidates and justices to build a pipeline to ensure that we have young leaders representative of the diversity of North Carolina ready to step up and help us take back the courts. We first have to play a bit of defense in 2024 and 2026. My seat is the only seat up in 24. Justice Anita Earl's seat is the only seat up in 2026. But then in 2028, 3 seats currently held by Republicans will be up, and we can win back our court that has put a majority of justice-minded people on the bench before the next round of redistricting. And we can make sure that we're putting justices on the bench who understand economic injustice, environmental injustice, the racial implications of restrictions on women's reproductive freedoms, and folks who are willing to interpret the Constitution in a way that makes the promises of our constitutional rights worth more than the paper that they're written on. And I think that's necessary to having a more just and equitable North Carolina.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your time here tonight and your service as well.
Thank you so very much.
All right, we are going to move on to the North Carolina Court of Appeals. And we would like to welcome as the first candidate, Ed Eldred. For the North Carolina Court of Appeals, I will talk with each of the candidates one at a time, just so that you know the order. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We will go ahead and start with a 1-minute opener.
So my name's Ed Eldred. I'm the Democratic Party's nominee for seat 14 on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals is a statewide court. It hears cases from every county. I will be on your ballot. The court's the most common cases the court hears are indigent defense, criminal and parental rights appeals. About 50%, probably more, of the cases they decide are those types of cases. I'm an appellate attorney. Those are exactly the cases that I handle. I represent indigent clients on criminal appeals and in parental rights appeals. The other part of my job that I mostly do is represent parents in DSS court, fighting to get their children back, fighting to preserve their families. I'm a certified specialist in child welfare law. Those are the cases the court decides. I'm going to bring a perspective to the court that it doesn't currently have that I think will be useful to help the court decide its cases.
Thank you. And thank you for the explanation of the court. One of the things that you mentioned was just the importance of child welfare and parental rights. Can you talk a little bit about that? Obviously, many voters are parents or have children that we care about. What is it important for voters to know about these cases for parents? What are the things that you could tell us about so that we will be better educated and understand how these decisions are made and the role of the court in making the decisions?
Well, in DSS court, the stakes are very, very high, and it's the government either trying to remove children from families or trying to put children with families that they consider quote unquote better. The Court of Appeals and the people that decide that, it's one judge in a trial court deciding that. The Court of Appeals is 3 judges removed from personalities, removed from the kind of the minutia, and they are there to make sure that the judge got the decision right. It is a backstop against an important, crucial right that parents have to raise their children. And if the court's not doing its job, then these decisions made by one judge are going to stand. People are going to get upset. People aren't going to be treated fairly. And so that's the court's main job. Most of those cases will not go to the Supreme Court at this point. Yeah.
And so just staying on the topic of parents and children, can you talk a little bit more about the impact of these decisions, especially on the Black community, as you think about justice, as you think about race, and what are the important, I guess, experiences or perspectives that you would bring to this to really continue to make sure that the Black parents and Black community is well supported?
Sure. Well, let me take the last part first, because the perspective I bring is as someone who's been standing next to parents in a courtroom as a judge is saying, you're not fit to take care of your child. And that is an extremely upsetting, something upsetting for people to hear. It's something they don't want to hear. It makes them mad. It makes them cry. Someone who's actually worked through the system and who knows what's going on behind the scenes. The Court of Appeals is just mainly going to be reviewing paperwork, court reports that people file, orders that judges sign. But to have been on the ground representing people, that's the perspective I bring. And frankly, it's lacking from the court because there aren't representatives of the parent defense bar on the court. And it's pretty obvious to me that the racial imbalance in the courtroom that I'm in all the time is stark, it's frightening, something that I am very, very aware of.
Can you talk about, so the next question, can you talk about your judicial philosophy?
Well, I agree with Justice Riggs that judicial philosophy is a code word for are you a Republican or are you not a Republican? Someone says, what's your judicial philosophy? You're either going to say, I'm an originalist or I'm a textualist. And that to most people really means almost nothing to non-lawyers. What it means in the media field is I'm a conservative. And I don't think I can add to what Justice Riggs said. That's just an inflexible way to look at things, an inflexible way to approach things. You know, a judge is about doing justice. And that means, can mean different things in different situations. And just to say, you know, I believe the words mean what the people who wrote them means. It's inflexible. It's kind of a way just to answer the question with a soundbite.
That's fair. For the next question, would love for you to respond to how can we think about it? How should we think about it? How should we reframe that question of judicial philosophy to help us think through something that's a little bit more flexible to help us really understand what's at the heart of the issues for an audience that are not lawyers?
Well, I think harkening back to Justice Riggs again, you know, her point in this election is that we are people. Judges are people. Judges have values. Judges have lived experiences that are different. That should be, you know, not every judge on the court should have the same exact professional background. Shouldn't have the same values. And being a judge means applying kind of your belief system, not belief system, but your values. You don't lose your values when you walk into the courtroom as a judge. And so that's why we've been going around saying, you know, I believe in this. I believe I'm standing up for my daughter's rights. I don't like the way the country's been moving. I'm concerned about our future. Rather than just saying, well, the Constitution is the bedrock, everything stops there, and it all gets back to that.
Thank you. We'll move into the 2-minute close.
Well, thank you for having me. One thing I've been saying on the campaign trail is that it matters who you're standing next to. The Republican legislature made this a partisan race, which means everybody has to pick a team. You don't have to be in the race, but if you're going to, you have to say, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. And the people on my side of the ballot, like Justice Riggs, like Judge Thompson, like Martin Moore, like Josh Stein, I can keep going, Mo Green, Jeff Jackson, Elaine Marshall. I know them all. They're all fantastic people. We all run into each other at all the same events. I've gotten to know them. I'm proud to be standing on that team. And frankly, if you're standing on the other team, which is so problematic in my opinion, you're exercising either very poor judgment or you're not being honest with us about the way you feel about your team. And that's particularly problematic for the other side's judicial nominees because they're either exercising poor judgment or not being honest. And neither of those qualities is anything you want anyone on a bench to have. So that's my closing. I'll say again that I'm concerned about my daughter's future. And that's why I've gotten out of my comfort zone here to be speaking with you on a Zoom call and to be going across the state, talking to large crowds of people. This is important stuff. And that's why I'm in it.
Thank you. There's about 30 more seconds. Can you say a bit more about your daughter and why that is so important to you?
Sure. She's 21 years old. She's off at college. We raised her here in Carrboro, where I live with my wife. What I've been saying is, I don't want my daughter in 10 years or whatever to say, Daddy, you had a chance to stand up for me. How come you didn't? That's not going to be me. I'm the guy standing up for her. Of course, it has implications for the rest of the public, but that's a driving force. And I know that because I represent parents who are fighting to keep their kids. I know how important family is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we would like to welcome Carolyn Thompson.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. We will go ahead and get started with a 1-minute opener.
Thank you for the opportunity. I am Carolyn Thompson, and I have the honor and the pleasure of serving you as the incumbent for seat 12 on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. I was appointed by the governor when he elevated Justice Riggs to the Supreme Court to take her seat on the Court of Appeals. But prior to that, I have 27 years of trial experience being a former trial attorney, trial judge on the district court bench for 10 years and Superior Court judge. quasi judicial judge, being on the as a deputy commissioner on the industrial commission. But I haven't just sat on the bench. I've remained active in my community, serving as a mentor to the youth, being a volunteer teen court judge where kids get in trouble in school or in the community and they have a second chance without having to deal with the juvenile delinquency court system, a domestic violence advocate, to the point that I have authored a book about domestic violence in the faith-based community, because I'm also a licensed ordained minister and deal with domestic violence in the church, the faith community. I'm so glad that's not a veil. I'm so used to veils and forums.
Thank you. Can you talk about the North Carolina Court of Appeals and its purpose and how you see the role?
It's a piggyback to what Ed just told the audience of what we do. There are 15 judges, but we sit in panels of 3. Like today, I had oral arguments, and one of us has to author an opinion, and that's very important to know the experience behind being a trial judge and a trial attorney when you're dealing with these issues. So you're not coming in cold on issues of family matters, criminal due process matters, and so with that, we review the record. And the very first thing I do is look at what happened in the lower court, starting with the record, not the persuasive arguments from both sides, because I have experience in creating that record. That's very important to be able to see exactly what the judge was thinking, the process, and how they got to the decision that is now before me as an appellate judge.
You have a lot of experiences, as you've mentioned, and you did mention that you, I think, had written a book on domestic violence and faith community. Can you talk a little bit about domestic violence, faith community, and the connection to the Court of Appeals?
Sure. And so as a minister and as an attorney at the time, it was very apparent to me is that a lot of my clients were coming out of the church, and the church did not know how to deal with it because there may be a stigma involved with it. That's why the book is called Abigail's Veil, because there is in fact a veil that women come to church and they have on this persona that everything is okay, but under the veil they're hurting. And if you don't know how to recognize the signs and symptoms of domestic violence and know that the first thing that you should say is, are you safe, and not have you prayed and stayed and prayed and stay. This book actually combines the law as well as the scriptures to kind of give guidance to the faith community. How it has impacted me as an appellate judge is that I have seen appeals come from the lower courts where somebody may appeal because a block wasn't checked, but it doesn't take away from the protective order as they were trying to do to remove what was ordered in that particular case. And having represented victims and their children on a pro bono level, I know a lot of times that the victims leave their homes with just their pajamas and their children in hand.
What do you believe is the most important issues that voters should consider as they think about the North Carolina Court of Appeals and your current experiences, as well as what you would bring in the future term?
The first thing is to recognize that folks really don't know what the Court of Appeals is about. And we've done a lot of educating in the community while running. And it's our job as judges and candidates to be a part of the community enough to let them know that we are here, that they should know that the most powerful words you can say if you feel like the court didn't get it right or the judge ruled incorrectly, those 2 words are I appeal. And that's what I am pushing every time I'm talking to the person in the barbershop. Hey, did you know if your child support is you thinking that they misapplied this, you can actually say I appeal. Or if you're evicted from your residence or your apartment, did you know that you can file a petition to stay? That it's about educating the community about what the Court of Appeals is. And as Ed mentioned, we handle over 50% of the appeals because the legislative branch has changed how many cases the Supreme Court can actually hear. So often we are the last stop. The buck stops with the Court of Appeals. You don't even get to go up to the Supreme Court. So transparency and educating the community, I really believe those are the issues that we're facing.
Related to the education piece for the community, can you talk a little bit more about appeals? Between you and Ed, you both mentioned a variety of cases, but you also just mentioned, I think, evictions. You've mentioned domestic violence. Ed mentioned parents, children staying with their parents. Are there other things that the community needs to be aware of that they can appeal, and other issues that are brought to the court that you would like to make us aware of?
So when I was a district court judge, I used to say that we were the kitchen sink court. We heard everything, the domestic, the juvenile, the criminal. Because I came from the 9th Judicial District, we also heard the mental health cases that would go over to the mental health hospital for IVC or involuntary commitment cases. And so on that level, the next step is the Court of Appeals if you are going to appeal the lower court's decision. And I think people just kind of maybe don't know that if they just walk away and accept what happened, that they might have a better shot at the Court of Appeals taking a look at the record to see if, for example, the pro bono cases or folks who try to do their own appeal, to them, I want them to know that if it's handwritten, it means just as much to me as if you had a high-priced lawyer typing up your appeal or your notice to the court.
Thank you. And your closing.
I want to thank you again for this opportunity. And again, I'm expressing the experience that's necessary. You've heard from 2 other candidates who already have the experience necessary to continue on in this job. I have written over 70 opinions in less than a year that impacts the entire state. That's the level of this court. And as opposed to my opponent who authored the bill to deal with voter ID that was actually carved out and said it was by surgical precision, and now he wants to be a judge. But he also advertised that he's just a pharmacist with a law degree. We don't have time with the issues that we're facing coming up in this election for somebody who doesn't even know how to deal with the institutional knowledge of being an appellate judge. And I'm asking for your support, and I thank you so much for this opportunity to speak. Do I have still some more time? Wonderful. So I want to really, again, emphasize that the kind of work that I do, I'm invested in it because, as Ed pointed out, we're people. I'm a mom, I'm a nana. I'm now faced with having to explain to my biracial grandchildren why somebody is allowed to say that they could turn Black. And when you come to the table with those lenses toward justice and understanding that it's not equal, I'll gladly take on the role when my opponent is calling me an activist by saying I'm going to actively uphold the law. I'm going to actively look for justice in every case that I do and actively look for ways to balance our scales of justice if you're going to take that role. I am more of a Jeffersonian, that the document called the Constitution is a living, breathing document, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to vote. I wouldn't, as a Black woman or as a woman. It has to address our common sense issues in everyday life.
Thank you so much. We'd now like to welcome Martin Moore.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here this evening. Let's start with the 1-minute opener.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Thompson. As you heard, my name is Martin Moore. I'm an appellate attorney, former public defender, county commissioner, and the Democratic nominee for seat 15 on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. I'm sharing with people that these roles are so important, and you had some amazing introductions from Judge Thompson and Ed Eldred about what the court does. But I want to share with people, it's important that you know who's sitting in these seats, because a lot of times we hear judges and we don't really know what they decide. We don't really know what the Court of Appeals does, or very much about the people who are making these decisions. So it does come down to our values, our backgrounds, and our perspectives that we bring to the table. I'm a proud UNC grad, undergrad and law school both. Started my career as a public defender, so I became very attuned to the issues that people face when they don't have a lot of money in their pocket and they're trying to navigate a very complex legal system. So I think I'll bring that perspective to the bench that is currently not there. I've served in private practice on any number of complex commercial and civil litigation cases, and I also serve as a Buncombe County Commissioner. So I have that elected experience in knowing what communities face when they're trying to interpret these decisions from our appellate courts, and I'm honored to answer the next set of questions.
Thank you. You mentioned that it's important for voters to know the judges that they are voting for. Can you talk about what do you think is the most important issue? I know we heard that there's lots of different cases that the appellate courts decide on. So what do you feel like is the most important, or some of the most important issues that we need to be thinking about? And who are you and what are your perspectives within that? We may have to break that into 2 separate questions.
Well, that's a heck of a question to try to answer in a minute. I'll say this. I think we've seen more and more the courts are playing an interesting role in our daily lives. I'll share with people my unique perspective as a Buncombe County Commissioner. One of our core functions is funding not just of justice programs and what justice looks like in our communities, where we have things like the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council and where that money goes, or Justice Resource Advisory Councils, but also things like school funding and what that means for our community, and what the court guidance says about where our school funding comes from. For the people in my community as a commissioner, I've seen firsthand what happens when judicial decisions are overturned. Leandro being a good example of a situation where we had some clarity on how schools were ordered to be funded, and then watching that change just several months later has a significant impact on what life looks like for our local residents, what we pay in taxes, where we go, and how quality our education system is going to be at the local level beyond just a state by state analysis of how much people are getting paid for these kind of county questions. So I'm happy to dive in a little more if need be.
Yeah, I wanted to see if I could add one more piece to it. You mentioned Buncombe County, and right now the western part of the state is definitely in our prayers and volunteer efforts and all kinds of work and effort going to help that part of the state. Would if somebody wasn't supported, maybe an insurance claim or anything like that, does the appeals court have anything to do with natural disaster relief or anything? That might be something interesting, or if it's not, it would be helpful to also know that.
Well, I think that's a fascinating question. I suppose at some level it depends on who initiates those lawsuits. I won't comment too much on that in case that question comes before the court. I hate to conflict myself out of that. But I do think when you have these types of natural disasters, as we're navigating different things, many issues that are appropriately in front of the court might find their way there, right? We're talking at the local level about what our elections are going to look like in Buncombe County in places that have been devastated by the hurricane, and what that means. Can certainly imagine any number of justice issues coming up in relation to disenfranchisement, where we allow these voting sites, what the actions that the legislature took yesterday as far as changing the rules for what elections look like in 13 counties is going to mean for our local communities. And I think a lot of those questions are certainly going to be up for debate, because we have not seen storms like this at a time like this in an election year, particularly in Western North Carolina. This is a novel issue for us. So I'd be interested to see exactly what this means. But I think there's always an opportunity for us to discuss fairness and fair elections in any kind of situation like this.
Thank you. For the last question, you mentioned a couple of different issues that you have perspectives on and kind of who you are and bringing to the table. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to finish your response to that previous question or drill down into another issue that you feel like is important for voters to know.
Absolutely. Well, I think what you've heard as kind of unanimous theme across Justice Riggs and Ed and Judge Thompson, all of us bring a different perspective to the bench. Understanding the backgrounds of what people are facing in different communities, coming from Western North Carolina, as you know, and what looks like, what areas of case law have we addressed, or what areas do we just not have litigated as much. And I think having represented people who are indigent, having represented people from rural communities is an invaluable perspective when we're deciding issues, and everything from construction law to criminal justice issues. And having that myriad of experience, not just limited to criminal justice and what criminal law looks like, but really being able to dive into what local communities are facing is critical. I think having had appellate experience, being the candidate in my specific race who has done appellate work before, will be invaluable, as well as having trial experience and knowing at the ground level what do communities who don't have tremendous resources do when they're trying to make sense of really complex Court of Appeals decision is a huge equity issue. And I think that highlights the importance of why we need clear opinions.
Thank you. And your closing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for hosting this forum. I do want to echo what my colleagues have said. This race is really about values and making sure that you know what's at stake in this election, but also who the people are who are going to be making these important decisions for our state. A lot of the decisions are going to be made at the Court of Appeals level. That's the workforce court. So it's really important that we get it right, and that we have people sitting in these roles who have enough trial experience and have experience in multiple different areas of law to be able to identify the mistakes. You can't be an error correcting court unless you have experience doing multiple kinds of work here. Otherwise, you're learning on the job in ways that might not be beneficial for our state. So I think having that multitude of experience, from complex civil cases to criminal cases, and being a former public defender, will be valuable, because I think sometimes we discuss the justice system in a very abstract sense. A lot of interesting things happen in courtrooms. Depending on where you practice, you're going to have a different perspective on many different topics. I've been in courtrooms in front of certain judges in the West that do not operate the same as when I'm in Mecklenburg, or when I'm in federal courts, or when I'm in appellate courts. And each community has their own flavor, has their own issues, and has their own resources. And being sensitive to all of those things, knowing those going into serving the bench, is a critical part, I think, of making justice across our state, not just based on your zip code or how lucky you are to be in a jurisdiction with many, many well-educated, brilliant judges. I'm campaigning from Western North Carolina, so that looks a little bit differently right now. I've been wearing the commissioner hat for the past week here, and I'm grateful to have great teammates along our judicial races here who are willing to elevate each other and highlight how important it is that we elect justice-minded individuals to these spots. I also wanted to note that I'm also the youngest candidate running statewide right now. So I think having a young perspective, someone who has the experience to be an effective judge on the Court of Appeals, as well as bringing perspective and relatability and being able to connect with all different demographics, all ages, and all groups of people will be critical. And I thank you sincerely for giving me the opportunity and the platform to speak to some folks I haven't met yet.
Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for your service as well.
Thank you.
All right, so the next race is going to be the North Carolina House. For this segment, we're going to split it up slightly differently. Would like to welcome Beth Helfrich, Laura Budd, Brandon Lofton, and Nicole Sidman to speak with us. And for this round, we will rotate between candidates. Now, I do want to make it clear, even though we're rotating between candidates, each of the candidate is running for a separate House seat. So we have House 98 represented, House 103, House 104, and House 105. So we'll have the candidates, as they introduce themselves, be sure to tell you which House seat they are actually running for. All right, so that is Beth Helfrich, Laura Budd, Brandon Lofton, and Nicole Sidman. Give us just a second to get the names high. There we go. Perfect. All right. Welcome, welcome. Let's see. Let me just double check the names to make sure we have everyone here. Oh, there is Nicole. Let's see. And we need Brandon Lofton. And we are also looking for Laura. Is Laura on? I'm not seeing Laura's name. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, welcome. We will start with 1-minute openers for all of the candidates. We'll start with you first, Beth, then go to Nicole, then go to Brandon.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me. Thank you to Friendship Missionary Baptist Church and all the incredible partners for hosting this, and for all of you who are giving up your evening to be here and participate in democracy. I'm Beth Helfrich. I'm running for North Carolina House District 98, which is the north end of Mecklenburg County, so Davidson, Cornelius, and Huntersville. And I am a different kind of candidate. I am not a career politician. This is my first time running for public office. I'm a working mom of 5 who has spent nearly 2 decades in our schools as a teacher, administrator, and PTA president. I've organized, fundraised, served, and led, all while raising a bunch of small children, supporting our family's small business, and launching my own. But I'm running because every day I and all of us are feeling the burden of a GOP supermajority that is consistently prioritizing political points and power over the critical work of investing in our schools, protecting our rights, and preparing for our future. So we won't start seeing a different type of government until we start electing different kinds of candidates. That's why I'm running.
Thank you, Beth. We'll now move to Nicole.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Nicole Sidman. I'm running for House District 105. I am a lawyer, a former teacher and PTA president, and a mom of 2. And these are these experiences that have really led me to become a community advocate. I currently work with 800 families at Temple Bethel, and I have had the pleasure of partnering with many of you on this call. So you know my heart, and you know that at my core, I'm a servant leader. And that's the work that has really led me to be in front of you today. I've seen how the supermajority has usurped the will of the people with gerrymandering, stripping funding from our education, and passing the most restrictive abortion ban in decades. The person who's responsible for being the pivotal vote in overturning the governor's veto on those issues is my opponent, Tricia Cotham. And I just want you to know the person you see before you now working on these issues that have fueled my entire life is the person that you will see in the coming years in the House.
Thank you, Nicole. Brandon.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, everyone. Good evening. My name is Brandon Lofton, and it is my honor to represent you in the North Carolina House. I serve in House District 104. I'm a husband, a father, a lawyer. I started out my career as a civil rights lawyer and then became a public finance lawyer, which means I care a lot about fairness, but I'm also mindful about how our financial decisions impact opportunities in our communities. This is my third term serving in the North Carolina House. I first ran in 2018, flipped this seat to help break the supermajority back then. And since that time, along with my colleagues, have been engaged in numerous fights to try to stop the most extreme legislation. But unfortunately, as Nicole mentioned, we just had a member of our delegation switch parties last year. And since that time, we've seen some pretty extreme legislation in addition to the restrictions on reproductive rights. We've seen a repeal of the pistol permitting laws. We've seen changes to our election laws, allowing partisan observers greater access in polls. And so I'm running to increase investments in our children to help bring back
Thank you. I'm sure we'll get a chance for you to elaborate on that as well. So Beth, we'll go back to you for this question. Just pretend for a minute that, we are in middle school and we don't know a lot about the House of Representatives in North Carolina. Can you talk to us about what are the major responsibilities of serving in the House? And then given those, what skills and experiences do you bring to the table?
I appreciate this question. And it is a question that comes up often when I'm talking to folks at the door and I'm explaining, why this particular role. So our North Carolina General Assembly is the legislative branch of our state government, and it's made up of a House and a Senate, just like Congress. And as a member of the House, ultimately your responsibilities are pretty straightforward. You are there to advocate for the needs of your district by ideally meeting regularly with your constituents, listening to their input, identifying their needs, and then advocating for policies or the responsible use of tax dollars to ultimately solve those problems. So there's a lot of problem solving involved. Ideally, you're working across parties and then across, like bicamerally with members of the Senate as well. As Nicole and Brendan have both pointed out, there's not a lot of that happening right now. I do feel that collaboration is one of my greatest strengths. That was only one of the responsibilities, and I'm sorry, I totally ran out of time, but maybe Nicole can tell you the other responsibilities.
Yes, we'll pick up with that same question, Nicole. Can you add to that in terms of the responsibilities of the North Carolina House of Representatives? And what are the important things that voters need to be considering given those responsibilities?
Yeah, thank you. I noticed you explain it like we're in middle school, but I think that really all of our citizens need to understand a little bit better, because I think we can all say that what's happening in Raleigh affects everyday life and impacts us more than really anything else that's happening, and we don't pay enough attention to it. And I think we saw that with SB 20 passing the restriction on reproductive rights and the defunding of schools. So those are the kind of things that we can really impact, and so much of it comes through budgeting, making sure that Mecklenburg County is getting the money that they need from the budget, and we've seen a lot of situations where that isn't happening as well. So meeting with constituents, advocating for what our district wants is a really important aspect of that. Real quick, some skills that I take from that. I practiced law for over a decade, and I also ran a PTA. So I'm really good at understanding laws, and I'm really good at wrangling people and coming up with compromise.
Thank you. Brandon, as an incumbent, can you talk about some of the issues that you were able to help support in the last term, and kind of what kind of skills and experiences you bring as an incumbent to this race?
Yeah, so two things. One, in terms of being able to work across the aisle and find some compromise on bills, we were able to. I worked with Republicans to help get a regulatory bill passed that provided greater flexibility for new businesses starting up here in North Carolina. Got a bill out of the House unanimously to help our nonprofits, which are serving our communities. And all those skills in terms of working across the aisle and finding collaboration are key in terms of especially when you're in a minority. On the other side, I will say, when it comes to our budget, that's where the numbers really matter. That's where you have to have the veto power. You have to have some leverage to have larger scale negotiation and not just the individual negotiation member to member. And we're seeing that play out in our funding priorities we've had over the last few years, particularly with our chronic underfunding of our schools. My own sons have been impacted by not having a teacher in the classroom, and yet I had to go to Raleigh and vote on a budget that underfunded and spent more on vouchers and teacher needs.
Would love to pick up on the idea of education, as that's a really important state responsibility. Beth, can you talk about your perspectives on public education, and if you were elected, how would you support the needs from your district's perspective?
Yes, I'm a proud product of CMS myself. I'm a 99 graduate of North Mecklenburg, a child of a career public school teacher. We know that our public schools is the single most important investment that we can be making as a state. It's not just about investing in our students and our children, over 80% of whom are served by our public schools, but it's an investment in our state's future. And so to me, it's appalling that North Carolina ranks near the very, very bottom in terms of school funding effort and school funding. We're spending $5,000 less per pupil than the national average. And tomorrow they will vote, I think, if it gets called, to override another veto on a bill or proposal, part of the budget, to send an additional $250 million to private schools instead of to our public schools, instead of spending that money on teacher raises when we're facing an attrition rate of 11%. So we have to invest more, and we need the numbers in place to be able to have a veto power to force more investment to come through, per Brandon's point.
Thank you. Nicole, would you like to share your perspectives on education?
Absolutely. So also a product of public schools from kindergarten straight through law school. So I know how important the opportunity to have those educations are. I think that what Beth has said is so important, that we are investing in our children and our future. I want to take a minute and talk about how we're also investing in our economy. So when we have good public schools, we encourage people to come to North Carolina. We encourage people to move their businesses here. And when we are defunding our schools and making it not a place for people to move, then we lose a lot from that perspective as well. As far as teacher pay, our teacher pay is absolutely criminal, and we need to pay our teachers more. Teacher pay is the #1 indicator of having the best schools, because your teachers stay, and experienced teachers are what we want. I was a first-time teacher, and I know that you want teachers in the classroom for the long haul.
Thank you. Brandon, for your last question, you mentioned the importance of not just the individual votes, but being able to work across the aisles to be able to build kind of coalition and movement towards getting things done. Can you talk about that as it relates to education, given kind of the current balance in the House? How would you be able to move forward priorities in education, given the split and the balance of who's currently a representative?
Yeah, well, the bottom line is we need to change the split, and we need to change the dynamics in the legislature. This legislature has refused to comply with the Leandro ruling. They fought it tooth and nail. This legislature just passed a bill that Beth referenced earlier, the HB 10, which actually spends $541 million on private school vouchers versus $130 million towards teacher raises. That's 4 times as much on private school vouchers as we're putting towards teacher raises. On top of that, going to Nicole's point, we used to be the #1 state in the nation for business 2 years in a row. We lost our spot. We were passed by Virginia. The #1 factor they listed in moving Virginia #1, investment in its public schools. And then long term, we need to think about our tax policy. The fact that we're eliminating the corporate income tax, the fact that we're cutting tax at the state level, it sounds great until you drill down. The fact that we still have these needs in our communities, that shifts the tax burden down to the county, which means it shifts it onto your.
Thank you. I think this question will kind of pick up on where a few of you have kind of mentioned related to the economy. People are hurting. Inflation has been difficult. Jobs are still a challenge for many. based on what the North Carolina House of Representatives is able to do, can you speak to how you would help support initiatives that would put more money in people's pockets and help families? Beth.
Oh,
go first.
I was going to say,
Sorry.
do you want me to start first? Yeah, I mean, we are all feeling the pocketbook pain right now. I've got 5 kids, so trust me, when I go to the grocery store, it's that the sticker shock doesn't ever go away. And what I find when I'm talking to folks at the door, though, is that it's not just the cost of goods, it's the cost of services, it's the rising insurance rates and property taxes and healthcare costs and caring for families. I was actually really encouraged today at the Harris Walls campaign's announcement of a policy plan to expand Medicaid to include in-home healthcare services. That is a game changer for folks who are already struggling to pay for basic needs and services. So I think there are many functions of government and responsibilities of government that touch people's pocketbooks maybe in different ways. It's important to note that their tax code is the most critical one, though. Our tax rate, as he said, is the corporate tax rate is going to 0. Our tax revenues in North Carolina have actually fallen $224 million
So
since.
I'm going to go ahead and cut you off here, but in the closing, if you want to come back to that particular issue, you definitely would be able to.
Thank you.
Nicole, can you speak to your perspectives on the economy and what would be your role and position as a member of the House of Representatives to help with that?
Sure. So I actually will pick up a little bit right where Beth left off, which is some things we can do in the tax code, childcare tax credits, and any parent knows who ever had to pay for daycare or childcare of any kind. A lot of parents are trying to decide if it makes sense to quit their job because it costs more to have your child cared for than to stay home. So making sure that we're helping families having more opportunities for childcare, I think is really important. Here in Mecklenburg County, there are wait lists. Before you're even pregnant, you need to get on a wait list. So looking at alternatives to what childcare, making sure it's safe, effective. Also, pre-K. I mean, we shouldn't be paying for childcare through for 4-year-olds because we could be offering them pre-K. So I would love to see something like that happen as well. And I'll stop because.
Thank you, Nicole. Brandon, the most important thing that you could contribute as a member of the House of Representatives on the economy, or maybe something from your previous term that you'd want to speak to?
Yeah, I think the most important thing I'd like for everyone to walk away with is thinking about our state's investments and our state's tax policy in the long term. We do a budget on a biennium, so every 2 years, and by Constitution, it has to be balanced. But we don't necessarily take a long-term view for what that means in terms of our state revenues. So as Beth started to mention, we actually, after years of talking about a surplus, we actually lost revenue in terms of tax revenue at $224 million less tax revenue than we did the year before. We're projected to lose significant amounts of money in the years going forward, despite the fact that we're, I think, the 3rd fastest growing state in the nation. We're going to pass Ohio and Georgia by 2030. So you're talking about a rapidly increasing population, decreasing tax revenue. The needs are not going away. What that's doing is that's pushing the cost down, again, as I mentioned before, to property taxes, which exacerbates our affordability crisis that we're having here in Mecklenburg County and in other areas. So one thing I want to take away is pay attention to tax policy.
Thank you. And we'll do closing statements and I'll reverse it this time. So we'll start with Brandon, if you could give us your 2-minute close, and then we'll go to Beth and then Nicole.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys for having us. Thank you for putting this forum on. We've all heard it's said almost every election, this is the most important election of our lifetimes. I'll say it again, this one is, and the next one after that, and the one after that, because the fact is that we are in a period of time of transition. Long-held assumptions and beliefs about how government is supposed to work and about how we're supposed to invest in our communities are no longer shared across party lines, across ideological lines. So the outcomes of these races will do more than just decide who sits in the White House or the governor's mansion or who controls the legislature. They will lay the foundation for the legacy that we leave for our children and for our grandchildren and for every kid who's growing up across this state. All of us who are here right now, whether you grew up here in North Carolina or not, are the beneficiaries of the investments that previous generations made in helping to create a prosperous economy and a robust education and K-12, the university, community college system. If we neglect those priorities, if we neglect those investments, if we neglect to protect our fundamental rights with voting and fair maps, then we could see that legacy slip away, and we will leave our children worse off in a worse North Carolina unless we are vigilant, not only this election, but even after the election, and holding elected officials accountable. So I appreciate the work you guys are doing, the education and engagement, and I look forward to working with you going forward.
Thank you so much. Beth.
Yes, I love the framing of it as considering our long-term investment in our priorities. And yes, I think for many of us, we've long held on to the belief that that is one of the primary responsibilities of government, is stewarding with responsiveness and responsibility the incredible asset of tax dollars. As Brandon said, like, we are in this peak of rapid growth to our state, and yet because of the planned shift in taxing, we are losing tax revenue and failing to invest in the long-term infrastructure and systems that we know ultimately serve future North Carolinians and the future of our state. And it is a critical time for us to demand more from our state government. And one of the pathways that we as voters can do that is by electing enough more members of the minority party so that we can at least reinstate the power of the executive veto in this election. Every race is important up and down the ballot, every single one. So as you learn about voting and who's on your ballot, please make sure you're talking to folks about the importance of voting the entire ballot this year. I like to say that extremism is like water. It will find a way in. And so it's not just at the top of the ticket. We have to shore up every slot with folks that we know are dedicated to working and serving ethically, and with you as the voters and constituents at the forefront. My district is one of a very few number of toss-up districts in the state. It does, by electing folks like me and Nicole, we have the power to break the supermajority gridlock in Raleigh. If you're interested in getting involved, you can go to BethHelfrichNC.com and sign up in the district. I ask for your vote, and I will never take it for granted. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Beth. And Nicole.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for the invitation and for the time. I know how much goes into putting on a forum like this, and in my opinion, there aren't enough of them. So I really appreciate what you all do. It is so important that we have an opportunity to talk directly to the voters. Social justice, economic empowerment, educational equity, those are the issues that I have worked towards my entire life, both professionally and as a volunteer capacity. I do this work because I live these values, and I'm running for office because these values are under attack. The North Carolina General Assembly gained a supermajority when Tricia Cotham switched parties, and since then they've attacked the economic and physical health of women, especially Black women and women of color, with new restrictions on reproductive care, restrictions on abortion limit the economic opportunity of women, and decrease the quality of pre- and postpartum care, exacerbating the Black maternal health crisis and putting women at risk across the state. Charlotte has dealt with a social and economic mobility crisis for years, and I believe that the current approach to this crisis, just as we've spoken about, defunding the public schools, is wrong. My commitment to educational equity is strong commitment to our public schools. I support universal pre-K. I support funding our colleges, our HBCUs, and our public schools. We need to fully fund our schools, raise our teacher pay, and put public dollars into public schools. It's a commitment that has always worked for North Carolina, and we should continue with it. Education is the key to economic and social mobility. I know that for me. I know it was true for my mother, who was first generation American and was able to go to public school to become a lawyer in the 70s as a woman. And I want the voters in my race and the constituents of our district to know my commitment to these priorities and that my opponent broke years of promises to her supporters. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we will move on to the next race. And the next race is for House 99. We have Rob Yates. And we also invited Nassif Majid. I don't see Nassif yet. Let's see. Also, just in transition, I just wanted to note that we have a survey form. We really appreciate your feedback and utilize that during our planning. So please make sure that you fill it out for us this evening. And we are going to go ahead and jump right in. Rob, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, how you doing? Can you hear me okay?
Yep, can hear you just fine. Oh, there he is. Hello.
Yes, this is Representative Majid.
Nice to have you. Thank you for being here.
You want me to stand by?
Can you hear us? We can hear you.
Yeah, you want me to stand by?
No, we are getting ready to get started. I'm getting ready
Okay.
to actually have you go first. And
Okay.
if you could make sure that we're pronouncing your name correctly, if you could do a 1-minute opener to introduce
Yes.
yourself.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Nassif Majid. I serve you in the North Carolina House of Representatives, District 99. That's the Hidden Valley University and Back Creek area of Charlotte, Northeast Charlotte. I want to, first of all, thank you for having this political forum. It's a great service for people, you know, and it provides a great medium for voters to understand the candidates. I have a long and distinguished record of service in Charlotte. I served for 8 years on the Charlotte City Council. I'm a decorated Air Force combat pilot. I flew over 120 combat missions over North Vietnam as a B-52 aircraft commander and captain. I flew with the airlines. I'm a businessman. I own and operated a Burger King franchise in Charlotte for many years. And I'm currently serving in my 3rd term in the North Carolina House of Representatives. And with the vote of the people, House District 99, I'll be able to serve my 4th term. So again, thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you. Rob Yates, your 1-minute opener.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I can't believe we're right on time. When I saw 7:37, I was like, there's no way a political event is going to be that spot on. And here we are. So this is really cool to see a local event like this. I feel like we're watching commercials and just everything is hate this person, hate this person, hate this person from the top. These federal races that probably won't impact our lives nearly as much as the local races. And y'all are putting on this local event, just getting to meet the candidates, talk about issues that are really going to affect us. And I appreciate that immensely. Rob Yates, House 99, and Nassif, hello, nice to meet you. I think we met briefly at an event. Thank you for your service. Looking forward to a good race. I'm running as a libertarian. A lot of people don't know what a libertarian is. We're basically individual civil rights first and foremost over everything, principle over party. I see things going on like the bill being passed where the state government is allowed to hide bills and there's no accountability. And I just want to come in and hold the government accountable to the people that it's supposed to serve.
Thank you. Rob, we'll go to you first for this question. Talk about District 99. What are the needs of District 99? What are the most important issues and how will you help to address those issues?
Just so there's a couple things and they all tie in together. I know there's been some back and forth on what the national crime rate has been, but Charlotte crime has definitely been going up. Violent crime has gone up significantly in Charlotte. I think that ties in a lot to economic and housing issues. We see housing prices are going up and we see economic woes are going up. Inflation is getting worse. Unemployment's kind of holding steady, but people aren't making more money. I think we need to create more opportunity for people to have jobs. I think it's people who don't have jobs who get desperate, and that's where we see crime go up. I think that housing getting more expensive is just putting a lot of people out. You don't see generational wealth accumulated when people are unable to when property taxes are skyrocketing, they can't stay in their houses. Retirement age is extended. Retirement becomes a pipe dream. And all of these things come back, and then crime goes up. People don't want to live there. Then neighborhoods go down the hill. And I think by boosting economic prosperity, you will see crime go down and this area return to prosperity.
Thank you. Nassif, will you respond to the same question? Talk about District 99 and what are the needs and how will you help support those needs in the House of Representatives?
I think the top need for District 99 is affordable housing, as it is for the city and the county and really this whole state, but specifically affordable housing. Now, I've been able to work in the legislature to get some $10 million for affordable housing added to the budget for the North Carolina Housing Financing Agency. But another area that was serious is education. We've allotted over $500 million to public, to the private schools for taxpayers' money to voucher for private schools, and that just doesn't set right when our public schools have so much of a heavy need. So education is key. Teachers, raising the teachers' pay so we don't lose teachers to South Carolina and Virginia and Tennessee, because it's very important that we have a properly educated populace. So, we can have good economic growth. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's talk more about education. Rob, what are your perspectives on education and what would you support in the state, as well as, knowing the needs of District 99? What would this look like for you as a member of the House of Representatives?
Sure. So I think there's some fundamentally flawed approaches in our education system. Someone speaking previously said that teacher pay was the #1 indicator of a good schools, and that's actually categorically wrong. The #1 indicator of a good school is parental involvement in schools. We need schools that kids want to go to. We need schools that they're excited to attend, that bring parents into them. I do support school choice. I don't think the current voucher system is the way to go, though, for what it's worth. I think that people should be empowered to bring kids to a school that works for them. And I think that parents should be encouraged to be part of their child's education. I do think that teachers need to make more money, and I think good teachers need to make a lot more money. And I think we should create a system that incentivizes good teachers to make more money and holds bad teachers and bad schools accountable. I think you see things like Charlotte spending $100 million on clear backpacks that had to be put into a locker because they were cancer risk is the indication of schools not being held accountable for wasteful spending.
Thank you. Nassif, will you talk about your perspectives on education as an incumbent? You mentioned challenges with the voucher system, private schools. Can you talk more about kind of your perspectives on education and how you would work in the House to really be able to move forward the needs of your district?
Well, I don't vote. I vote against those type of situations, especially we're giving over $500 million for private school vouchers with taxpayers' money. And we have public schools who have needs in our public schools. I think that should be the priority, especially even the bills have been passed where they can be multi-millionaires and they can still get a voucher for their children. So I think that's terribly flawed. And two, we are 38th in teacher pay, 38th in the United States in teacher pay. That's terrible. It tells you where our priorities should be different. And in as much as the key role that education plays. See, we have private school. I mean, we have the preschool, the programs that we have that Mecklenburg County supplements. Okay, and so I don't even see how we can satisfy that. We should have universal pre-care before we started giving private school vouchers out to for the schools like that.
Thank you. In the previous discussion, the candidates talked about how important it is to be able to have a majority, to be able to move votes forward, and also to be able to collaborate and work across the aisle to get things done. Can you talk, Nassif, about your experience in being able to work across the aisle, being able to move important issues forward based on the experiences that you've had in the House?
Well, it's difficult. but you have to work across the aisle to get something done. I've learned how to operate in this environment. I've got bill through. I got one bill through the House, got over to the Senate, and it was. But you have to have somebody from the other side to tag on and help you out, because that's the politics of the situation. Working to get that $10 million for the affordable housing. You know, I have to work with people across the aisle on committees, or working to get the millions of dollars to help our veterans out. I have to, you know, I'm a veteran myself. I serve as vice chair of the Military Affairs and Veterans Committee. I have to work with people across the aisle. We in the minority. That's a must. Nothing can move without that type of cooperation. And I have to work to reform relationships, enable me to get things done under these circumstances.
Thank you. And Rob, you would be new to the House. Can you talk about how you would, especially as a libertarian, how would you work with both parties to be able to move things forward?
Well, I will promise you this: I would be a thorn in both party sides. I think we need more accountability. I think one of the bills that's really bugging me is the Republicans passed that bill where they can, exempt certain things from the FOIA request because they say it's secret. That's the opposite of government accountability. I think that unaffiliated is the highest voting bloc in North Carolina now. It has eclipsed Democrat and Republican by a significant margin, but unaffiliated voters can't get represented on the Board of Elections. I think that we have really locked into this two-party system. And when we talk about working across the aisle, it's always one or the other. It's not about compromise. It's about discussion. It's about accountability and saying what our results are and going towards those results. I would hold both parties accountable, or all parties accountable. If we say we're going to do something, I want to know what it's intended to do, and I want to see steps on how we get there. I want to see criminal justice reform, and I want to see steps to get there. I want to see improved education, and I want to see steps to get there. I want to see an improved economy, and I want to see steps to get there. And I want to see steps taken towards protecting our environment.
Thank you, Rob. We'll go ahead and move right into the 2-minute close, and we'll go to you first, Rob. Now, I do want to remind everybody that this is, they are both candidates here are running for House 99. So it would be helpful in your final remarks to just let us know really what distinguishes you as a candidate and why we should vote for you.
Yeah, so I have not held office before. I don't have any major donors. I'm not afraid of backlash. I got nothing to hide. I am here for the people of North Carolina. I promise you there will be issues on which we agree, and I promise you there will be issues on which we disagree. I come from a very different political place, but what I promise you mostly is that I will do everything I can to fight for your rights and for your opportunity in North Carolina. I love this state. I love this city. I love these people, and that is my primary focus, and I will do everything I can, including holding myself accountable and moving forward. What we need in our government is intent. We need goals. We need to say, this is what we want to accomplish. We want cleaner air. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does cleaner air mean? And how do we get there? Let's line up steps and let's pass legislation that moves us that direction. We want to improve our economy. Okay, that's a platitude. What does that mean? Do you want more jobs? We want to lower unemployment. Do you want to raise wages? I actually agree with Nassif that the biggest thing we're facing is I don't like the term affordable housing. It's housing. All housing is affordable for someone. We need housing that's affordable to lots of people. So we need to build more, but we have these incredible zoning restrictions that are preventing it. Occupational licensing laws, another big one. You want to start a business in North Carolina. Have you ever looked into what it takes to start a business in North Carolina? We have 973 occupational licenses requirements in North Carolina. If you want to open a barber shop, it takes a year and $14,000 up front to open a barbershop, and then you have to go find a place that's zoned to start a barbershop. To me, that's ridiculous. That's the opposite of the government working to help people out. I want to move barriers out of the way. I believe in the people of the state, of this district, of this city, and I want to open the world up so that we can do the things we are able to do and prosper and see North Carolina grow.
Thank you, Rob. And we will go to Nassif for his closing.
Yes, I've always been a champion for the people of House District 99 in North Carolina. I have worked hard to secure Medicaid expansion for some 600,000 citizens that to have affordable health care. I advocated for him for the $10 million for the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency and was successful as an addition to affordable housing for our state. I was listed as a champion for the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce as a job champion for the North Carolina Chamber of Commerce. So my extensive local political experience combined with my experience in the House of Representatives, this has enabled me to be an effective legislator. And thanks again to the Justice Forum for providing this political platform.
Thank you so much for both of you for your time and
Thank
for
you.
running for this important office
Thank you.
and for your current service as well. Take care.
Thank you. Peace.
All right. The next race that we are moving into is the Mecklenburg County Commission race. And I'm just going to do a quick check of our candidates. Let's see, I am looking for Angela Edwards, Elaine Powell, and Susan Rodriguez. Oh,
I'm
I see
here.
Susan.
Elaine Powell, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I see Susan. And let's see, Angela. I'm not seeing Angela yet, but we will go ahead and get started. So thank you, Susan. Thank you, Elaine, for being here. We have, for this particular segment, Elaine Powell, who's representing District 1, and Susan Rodriguez McDowell, who's representing District 6. And we're combining all of the conversations, even though people are not running against each other per se. So we can start off with opening statements, and we will go to you first, Susan.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Susan Rodriguez McDowell. I am Commissioner for District 6, which is the southernmost part of the county, including Mint Hill, Matthews, Pineville, Ballantyne, Lower Steel Creek, and South Charlotte. And I was first elected in 2018, and I'm running for my 4th term. And it has been my honor and my privilege to do this job, and I hope to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Elaine?
Good evening. I am Mecklenburg County Commissioner Elaine Powell. I represent District 1, which is the northernmost part of the county. I represent Huntersville, Davidson, Cornelius, North Charlotte, and a big chunk of unincorporated Mecklenburg County. And I'll tell you more later, but I moved here in 1986 to Mecklenburg County. I have worked or lived in every district. I came here to work with the Sisters of Mercy. We opened Mercy Hospital South in 1987, and which is now Atrium Pineville. And so my background is clinical healthcare, which is kind of the reason that I ended up here. While I was working at the hospital, I heard a need. There was a need for someone to be involved in tutoring. And so my 35-year history of working to make a difference started as a community partner at Eastway Middle School as a tutor on my days off.
Thank you. You both are experienced commissioners, but I just want you to pretend for a minute that you're talking to a group of people that doesn't have a lot of experience with the county commission. Can we go to you first, Susan, for you to explain what is the Mecklenburg County Commission, and why do voters in Mecklenburg County need to pay attention?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. This is something that a lot of people, they don't know the difference between, say, city council and county commission. And so one of the ways I like to describe it is the whole community is like a body, and the city council is like the brains of the body. They are responsible for the infrastructure, the zoning, police, roads, things like that, things that make the community run. The county, on the other hand, we are the heart of the community. So you need both the brains, which is the city, and you need the heart, which is the county. I love being in the heart part of that equation, because what we're talking about is Health and Human Services. What we're talking about is Park and Recreation, clean air, clean water, environmental sustainability. I'm the chair of development. I love the music playing that. It's
Thank
That's the first time
you.
I've heard that.
Can we
Okay.
pick up on that question for you, Elaine? And can you explain a bit more about what is the county commission? How many people is it? What are the types of issues that you are helping the county with?
So there are 9 of us. There are 6 districts. There's a commissioner for each district, and then there are 3 at large. The most important thing for the heart, but we also are very smart, so we have big brains. The most important thing is really listening to the community. And I was elected with Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell in 2018, and we have worked on really listening to the community on what is important to the community. And the priorities that come up are like healthcare access, pre-K, early education, workforce development, lifting people out of poverty, reducing racial disparities it was our #1 priority, but we decided that wasn't enough. We wanted it embedded and cross-cutting in all of our priorities. And so that's how we have it. It's just, we're good listeners.
Thank you. Susan, can you talk about, in the previous term, what were the 3 most important issues for the county? And as you look forward, what do you think the 3 most important issues will be? So is it kind of a continuum, or do you see things changing?
I do see things changing a bit. When we were first elected in 2018, the county wasn't even involved in affordable housing. We didn't see it as our space. It was a city responsibility, and it mostly really is still. But we have made, I think, impacts around affordable housing. So when we came in, we thought that was one of the #1 issues. We also considered mental health to be another main issue for us. I'm trying to think of the 3. What would be the 3? Education has always been a #1 issue to all of our constituents in the whole community. So that's always been a focus as well. So I would say those 3 things are big focuses. And then if I'm looking ahead toward this term, I believe that, well, education for me is a huge one, because I feel like we've really gone off the rails at the state level, and we're in a crisis mode at this point, with not having enough teachers in our schools. So
Thank you.
sorry
We'll
about
come back to the issue of education. Elaine, can you talk about what you see as the 3 most important issues, have they shifted, or do you anticipate that they will shift, and what's important for voters to know about those issues?
So some of the issues that I went over are, they're constant issues. They're always important. And we don't make decisions without community pulse information. So they're very important. We have when people get elected, they say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And then you get elected and you see how many responsibilities you have. And you have to address by law, you have to address many, many things. So there's not much money left over. So when we started to address, we were hearing when we were elected in 2018, how important affordable housing was or is, and how can we address it legally? And so we jumped in with rental subsidies, critical home repair, different things that we could do to help rapid rehousing for victims of domestic violence. And so they kind of stay the same, but they shift in like how much you hear about them.
Thank you. For the next question, there's 2 questions that I want to ask, so I'll let you decide which one you'd rather respond to. The issue of education, because that becomes important. It'd be helpful to know kind of, we've heard from state representatives, but at the county level, what can really be done? What's your responsibility? And kind of what are your perspectives that are important for voters to know? But it would also be helpful to understand your kind of perspectives on affordable housing. Elaine, you had started talking a little bit more about that, but I know that that's a pressing issue that many people are also curious about. So I'm not sure if you want to choose one or split the question in half in terms of 30 seconds. We'll go to you first, Susan.
Okay, 30 seconds is just not long enough, but I will go with the school part because education, in my view, education is critical right now because we are in a crisis mode of shortage for teachers. So if you're asking how can the county play a part in that, in my view, it's about collaboration with the school board. It's about listening to what they need. And it's also about, like, we can't totally fund as much as it would take to be able to hire more teachers. We have to have the General Assembly for that. They're, tossing out $463 million to vouchers. That could have been money used for teachers to actually hire teachers, have teachers in classrooms. That's the number one way to grow our scores and for children to really learn, is to have that most important thing in their classroom is the person up front. So as far as the county goes, we have to continue to listen, collaborate with the school board, and not be adversarial.
Can you just repeat that last part?
Yeah, I think not being adversarial, to realize we all have the same goal and we need to pull together to find the best ways that we can address the issue with the limited resources that we have.
Thank you. Elaine, did you want to address the affordable housing or speak to your perspectives on education?
Let me start with affordable housing because I forgot a little part in my brief time. We are also investing in naturally occurring affordable housing. We have to, you have to follow all the legal guidelines of what you do with the taxpayer dollars. And this is something that we can do. So we're doing the rental subsidies, critical home repair, natural occurring affordable housing. We've purchased multiple properties. They will be long-term affordable housing for folks who need it. And the rapid rehousing for victims of domestic violence is also something that was completely underfunded and really not paid attention to, where we have made a difference with that. As far as education, one of the speakers before, maybe Brandon Lofton, was talking about the burden that the state puts on the counties, because we can't just close our eyes to the underfunding of education. We have to try, and with limited resources, we have to try to make up for it, but we can't totally make up for it.
Did you want to finish that statement?
It's impossible. It's impossible for us to make up for it without the state doing their part.
Thank you. So you've mentioned, I think, Elaine, you mentioned the importance of listening and hearing from the community and kind of the community pulse. You've also mentioned the limitations on what you think you want to do versus what you actually can do given all of the responsibilities. And so I just wondered if you both could talk about what is the best way for us as community members to be able to share our voice and our perspectives with county commissioners, and what should we also kind of keep in mind about the perspectives that we're sharing, especially given all of the responsibilities, all of the different things that we need to get done. Does that make sense? Do you want to go first, Susan?
Sure. I think the best way to communicate with us is to show up, to come to our meetings. Our meetings used to be way better attended before COVID. Since then, there's been a huge drop off in people coming out to our meetings, and people can come and they can make public comments. They can take 3 minutes and actually speak directly to us. That really is effective. We really are listening. I think this forum so far has been amazing. The little part that I've seen, engaging with us in this way, asking these questions and having this dialogue is absolutely fantastic. So we also have committee meetings. So if you're in a more granular level interested in a certain topic that you want to speak about or you want to understand more, you can come. Our committee meetings are public meetings. All of our meetings are public meetings. And so everyone is welcome to come down and attend our meetings. They're on our website, all the dates.
Go ahead.
And I agree with her. Citizen engagement has dropped off. And so I've been around a long time, 35 years. So I'm really good at, people know how to find me. And I'm really good at being, in, like today, I was in my flooded area talking to the residents who live there. So I want to hear from them. I don't want to tell them what they need. I want to hear what people need and what people in crisis are going through. I love what Commissioner Rodriguez McDowell said, because it's your chance, your 3 minutes to come tell the entire board what is important to you. We also seek input from our advisory boards and advisory councils. There are so many for things that you're interested in. We could have a town hall. Like if you wanted to have a town hall, we could have that with whatever topic you wanted. Email, you can email us, you can call us. We really do listen, respond to, we do it so much that we're usually not even in the driveway until 10 p.m. at night. It's a lot of work. But the other thing I want to say is social media is not the way to get in touch with us because we can't respond. And so a lot of people think social media is the way. It's not. We have to respond the legal way through the government, through the government network.
So we'll go to closing. And for this one, we will do 1 minute closings for both commissioners. Will you like to go first, Elaine?
Sure. So together, this commission, we work together to establish priorities. We are a team. We are committed to our priorities. They're based on community input. But my top priorities that I'm really good at, like we all have different hyper-focus areas. My top priorities are community engagement. Like when the community is engaged, really hearing them. Environmental stewardship, protecting our natural resources, our air, our water, our soil, our wildlife habitat, all these different things, green space, top priority. Emergency management. We don't know what emergencies we're going to face. We need to be ready. And health and wellness. I also serve on the Health and Wellness Committee for the county, and I am the chair of environmental stewardship. And I am the liaison to all the Marine commissions, and I am the liaison for Central Lina, regional government, and I could probably list a few more. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Powell. Susan.
Yes, so gosh, I'm not very great at having these speeches prepared, but what I would like to say is that I'm an extremely hard worker. I serve on so many committees at the local, state, and the national level. Trying to make sure that Mecklenburg County has a seat at the table is really important to me, that our voices are heard at all of those levels, that our people are heard, that our needs are known. And so I'm working very hard to listen to my constituents, to stand up for them. I'm not afraid of pressure, and I'm known for standing up for my constituents and asking the tough questions, even in that pressure. And I'm also a listener, and I really do want to hear from people. And that's probably the thing we spend a lot of time on, is answering emails, reading emails. We do have a lot of prep work for our meetings, so we do research that, but I would say communicating with constituents is probably the #1 thing that we're doing. So thank you. I ask for your vote.
Thank you so much. So we've gotten invitations to attend meetings, and also we've gotten invitations to send emails. Don't use social media if we want to actually be heard and get those responses. So thank you so much, Chibo, for being here, and thank you for your current service on the county commission as well. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, we will move to the last race of the evening, which is for Mecklenburg County Commission District 5. And we invited Art McCullough as well as Laura Meyer. I see Laura Meyer's name. I am not seeing Art McCullough. All right. Good evening, Commissioner Meyer.
Good evening. How are you guys?
Doing well. Thanks so much for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started. And if Art comes in and joins us, then we will loop Art into the conversation.
Great.
So if you could start with your 1-minute opener to introduce yourself to the audience here.
Sure. Thank you. I'm Laura Meyer. I represent District 5 on the Board of County Commissioners. And if you don't know what District 5 is, it goes from East Boulevard all the way to Highway 51, Monroe Road, and South Boulevard. So that's kind of a rough sketch. All the way up South Boulevard, that whole corridor. That's my district, and I have represented that district for 4 years, 2 terms, and I'm seeking my 3rd term. I have really found it to be an honor and a privilege to serve my district. I know that when I cast a vote, I cast it for the whole county. We all have 1 vote, and it takes 5 to get something passed. And I think that at this point, we have a great team on the Board of County Commissioners, and it's been a pleasure working with all of them. We all have our strengths, and we listen to each other, and we debate, and it's healthy. And I've really enjoyed being there, and I hope to earn a 3rd term.
Thank you.
Yes,
From your colleagues, we heard about just the importance of engagement, participating in meetings, sending emails, sharing feedback. And then we also heard about just being informed and kind of understanding what's on the table. Can you talk about your perspectives on community engagement, especially given your experience as a commissioner? What does it look like as we, move forward into the next year?
Great question. Community engagement is so important for us because that's how we keep our fingers on the pulse of what's going on in our district, but also the whole county. Because when I get emails, I read every single one. It is hard to respond to every single one, but it is important because that becomes public record. And I'm not sure if people understand that, but it's public record. It's out there. You've engaged with us, and that means something to us. If you took the time to email, then we should take the time to read it. And I know I do, and I can speak for several of my other colleagues, they do as well. I think that there are other ways of community engagement, speaking at meetings, coming to the meetings, etc. But and being in front of us, we will meet with you. I'll meet anybody for coffee. I've never said no to somebody for coffee. We're good listeners, and that's what we do, because we represent the people. And we're not representing our own interests. I'm representing District 5, and I have to listen to them. It's my job, and that's how I get things done, and that's how I'm guided by the people.
Thank you. Can you talk about the committees that you serve on the county commission and some of the initiatives you've spearheaded or important issues that you voted on that you'd like for us to know about?
Sure. I serve on economic development along with Susan Rodriguez-McDowell, who is chair. And I have not spearheaded anything on that committee, but I am very proud of some votes that we have cast, particularly a developer who wanted to who tried to obtain some county money for his development, which was a mixed use kind of a building with condos. And every single one of us voted no, because it had no affordable housing. And we are dedicated to that. And I will continue to fight for affordable housing. I will never give money to a developer who does not include affordable housing. I also serve and chair the audit committee. I serve on Health and Human Services and Intergovernmental Committee. And Health and Human Services is what the county is. We are a Health and Human Services agency. And so I proudly serve on that committee. To be perfectly frank, I would like to see that committee do more and not just have presentations.
Thank you. Can you talk about the audit committee and why is the audit committee important? Why is it important for voters to know about it?
The audit committees, we basically oversee what's going on in the county and make sure that things are going that are lawful and no fraud. And not only, it's not just about money. When you think of audit, you think of money. It is looking at money and financial things like that, but it's also looking at sexual harassment complaints, fraud complaints. There's so many different kind of complaints that we have to check into. Any kind of complaint is looked at, and so it's important that there is a check and balance for the county. And we have two different levels. One is inter, which is inside the government, and then another one is intra, and that is a outside company audits us. And so it's just very important. Any big institution, any large financial institution, we're the biggest employer in the county. We should have a check and balance.
Thank you. Can you talk about, so this is a contested race and your opponent was supposed to be here. Can you share anything about kind of the differences between your work, your perspectives versus your opponent as voters are trying to make their decisions?
Absolutely. I'm really disappointed he's not here. I was looking forward to showing you all the differences between us. All I see, and I really don't know where he stands on issues because he's not talking about county issues, and it really bothers me. And I don't want to badmouth him because he's not here, so I will try not to. But he really does not quite grasp what the county does. And at this point, he should know more a little bit about what the county does. He's talking about things that we don't fund, like the police. Like, we need to fund the police more. That's a city function, and that's not a county function. I know that we are a health and human services agency. I know we're here for the people, and I'm not hearing him talk about that at all. His videos are about taxes and how there should be a Republican on the board. And the way that what I say to that is the voters have spoken. And if the voters want what they have on the board, then the voters should have what they have on the board, regardless of what party we're from.
Does the county commission have any role related to law enforcement? And if so, can you talk about what that role is and what the county does have jurisdiction over?
On the CMPD side, we do partner with CMPD for neighborhood safety programs, like criminal interrupters, I think they were called, violence interrupters. We have programs like that, but mostly we are the funders of the sheriff's department and the jail and the court system. We do not fund the court system nearly enough the way we need to. We need the General Assembly to do what they should do as well. The sheriff's department, we do fund, but I want to make it clear, we can't tell the sheriff what to do. We have no jurisdiction over his duties and his responsibilities. What he presents to us as a budget is what he has decided, not what we have decided. So we didn't want the juvenile detention center to close. It was one of the best in the Southeast, I believe. It was a great reputation, but he didn't have the staff and he wasn't getting supported by the state, and he closed it down. That was not our decision at all. But there was nothing we could do. So as far as law enforcement, the sheriff's department we fund, and the court system we fund.
Thank you.
But not CMPD.
We will go to your 1 minute close.
Okay. Well, I'm disappointed he's not here. I really am. I was looking forward to speaking with him. I'm Laura Meyer, County Commission on District 5. It's been an honor fighting for public education, which is my #1 priority. Green space and our parkways and our greenways. Our mental health system really needs to be beefed up, and I think that this commission has seen the need for that, and they're backing it. I also think that public health care, public access is so important, and we also have made that a priority on our Board of County Commissioners. On this board, we have worked together great. We're doing wonderful things, and I look forward to another term, and I hope that I've earned your vote.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your current service.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for hanging out with us this evening. I am now going to turn it over to Dr. Charles Love.
Thank you so much. Before I make announcements, I would like to thank you, Dr. Thompson, for your moderating this evening. I'd like to thank Mr. Chester Cooper, our technology coordinator, the participants, our partners, and the candidates. You'll see some announcements scrolling across the screen. I'd like to bring your attention to a couple. Number one, the absentee ballot deadline. We'd like for you to go ahead and mail your absentee ballot in as soon as you get it. Be reminded that it's going to take $1.77 or 3 forever stamps to send that ballot in. If you do not have the proper postage on it, it will not be counted because it will not get to the Board of Elections. So be mindful of that. 177 or 3 forever stamps. Another announcement I'd like to make, and that is the Social Justice Ministry at Friendship is requesting volunteers to tutor K-4 students in the public schools. There'll be a short training session at Friendship. The contact information has been placed in the chat. You can call Stephanie Gainey or Hope Drummond at Friendship, and I've placed their contact information in the chat. Also, I'd like to remind you to complete the survey that's in the chat. It helps us with our planning for future forums. Another announcement, there will be a March to the Polls beginning at Friendship on October the 20th at 11:30. We encourage you to come and join us in the March to the Polls. The other announcements you've seen on the screen. Again, we thank you for your participation and have a rest of the night and enjoy. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.